Welcome to your Monday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Plenty to get to today. I'll be joined in a little bit by Jason Gurwin from the Streamable as I try to help you navigate the streaming wars between regional sports networks like Fox Sports North and carriers like YouTube TV and Hulu. Has not been great for you, the consumer, lately, but Jason will help us kind of navigate that. But first, what did I miss? Well, really quick, you missed the Gophers men's basketball team losing at Nebraska. And because of that, I need to bring in Patrick Reusse very quickly here, Star Tribune columnist, because he wrote a column before that game about Richard Pitino and how he thinks Richard Pitino needs to go as head coach. And that game against Nebraska only fortified his opinion. So let's bring in Patrick right now. It's becoming a podcast tradition that Patrick and I gather on a Monday morning and talk about the job status of a prominent basketball coach in this market. Last week, Patrick, it was Ryan Saunders after he was fired by the Timberwolves on a Sunday night. And right now, you had a column in Saturday's paper basically saying it's time for Richard Pitino to go. And that was before they lost at Nebraska, Patrick, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yes.
how did you get to that point? Was it the Northwestern loss was the last straw? Was it a building process? What brought you there?
Well, it was the Northwestern game. I still thought that if he was to, if he goes 3-1 against that lousy schedule that they were playing the last four, if he beats Northwestern at home, he beats Nebraska, and he beats either Rutgers or
Penn State,
Rutgers and at Penn State and Rutgers. I mean, that's as easy as it gets in the Big Ten right there. I would think he was going to make it. And then they go out and get a 17-3 lead against a team that had lost 13 in a row. And they somehow managed to get beat. And it's just absolute chaos. And the criticism you hear from people, and not many, by the way, not many criticism, but if there's a criticism, it's you guys always want to fire the coach. Your media always wants to fire the coach. I can't remember the last time, maybe it was Coach Brew, that I said, fire the coach. You have to fire that I wrote a column, you have to fire the coach. But when you look at Richard's track record, it's abysmal. 8 years. And I was on the hire, ripping the hire from the beginning, just because I don't think you can hire a 30-year-old guy who's had one season at Florida International to come up here and compete in the Big Ten. And I never really changed my mind. I never really thought he had it going. I guess, the 1 year he was 24-10, and they made it the tournament. They got beat, but hey, Mike, you look at those numbers; they're unbelievable. 14 and 60 on the road in the Big Ten. That's, it's unheard of. It's horrible beyond belief. The guy doesn't have any presence. He doesn't get along, obviously, with the local, the statewide high school coaches. They aren't going to go ripping him. But Chip Scoggins' really good piece on Will Cheddar, the kid from Stewartville, we did a really good piece in Sunday's paper. But, okay, the Gophers don't get the Jones brothers, and they don't get Jalen Suggs, but they've never missed on one of these kids if they wanted to. A farm kid from outstate Minnesota, they grow up being Gopher fans. Right. And to have him get one visit with Michigan, I mean, it's just kind of a look at the entire program. The fact that a kid like that just doesn't even end up considering the Gophers. Apparently, it was I don't know. It's just over. Yeah. And I think it's probably going to happen. One thing about Coyle, he's not a coward in these situations. I mean, Joe Maturi, remember he was sent to Cincinnati to fire Munson, and just felt so bad for him. He didn't hire him and brought him back, and then fired him 7 games into the next season. But I don't think, Coyle, in his quiet, boring, frustrating method in which he runs this operation is not afraid to fire people. And I think that it's over for Pitino. And apparently they had a meeting Friday, and there's some reports. Doogie Wilson was reporting at Henry Lake that the meeting, the message that received by Richard was not promising. So.
Yeah. Well, and then, right, you lose to Nebraska, but a day after that, 2 days after that. And then here we are now. Let's, really quick, let's get into you in the piece you wrote for Saturday. You had a few names that you put out there. Boy, sure seems like Brian Dutcher makes a lot of sense, right? I know he's not a quote unquote young up and comer. He's 62. Plenty young, though, to coach in major college basketball. And the most interesting thing to me about that is not only did he have a great year at San Diego State last season, and they got him going again this year. There's article in the San Diego Union Tribune from September about signs a big 6-year extension. He's got a $6.9 million buyout. And then we get about 20 paragraphs in. It goes, oh, by the way, the buyout's only $1 million if he wants to go to Minnesota.
Yeah, that's the Lou Holtz clause from the middle 80s. I could go to Notre Dame. Sid and the fellas made up that excuse for him that I could go to Notre Dame if I want. But in this case, Dutcher has it written in there.
He's got it right in his contract.
Yes. The problem I see is that there's people telling you that Coyle doesn't want to go big financially. He doesn't want to go beyond $2 billion. The $2 billion on this deal. And to me, I don't know if, Brian Dutcher loves San Diego. He's been out there forever. He's ended up raising his, family out there, basically. I mean, he was in Michigan a long time, too. I think as much as he loves Minnesota, as he said, it's my school. I don't think he's going to take it for the cheap. Do you?
Right. No,
you got to make him a competitive offer. That's for sure.
You do.
And
I mean, whatever he gets is going to be a raise on what he's getting at San Diego State, right? He's got a 6-year, $7.8 million contract. So if you give him 2, he's getting a raise. But yeah, you're right. You want to be paid if you're sought after. You want to be paid competitively.
Yeah, and so I suppose he'd come from 2. Here's the other one. I didn't believe this to be true, but somebody spends a lot of time around college basketball programs, let's put it this way, says Eric Musselman wants the job.
Really? He wants to get out of Arkansas?
Well, he loves Arkansas, but he also loves the idea of coming back to where his dad started the family situation and basically adding to the good, wiping out the bad, and kind of a family legacy of, I wouldn't say to completely transform his father's tarnished name, because for some of it, it's not that tarnished.
Right.
I love the goofy guy, but that he's smitten by the idea of coming back here. But that, Arkansas just gave him an extension too, right. And I'm sure the manner to get him out of Arkansas is more complicated than to get Brian Dutcher out of San Diego. So
yeah, that sounds about right. Last thought for you: is this the winter, Patrick? Have the Gophers and Timberwolves brought you to a point where you would consider becoming a Wild watcher on the TV? Because they seem pretty interesting, and these two basketball teams are not.
No, and it's really difficult for me because to sit down and watch a regular season hockey game from start to finish, unless I'm there covering it, is virtually impossible for me. I just, I'd rather just turn it and watch the highlights because they show you the goals anyway, right?
Right.
What do I care? What do I care if there's a bunch of guys skating around the middle of the ice for 40 minutes and nobody scores a goal? I don't know. Many years ago, Tom Reed had me on this was so long ago, Tom was doing the Gopher games, right?
Okay.
And we were up in Duluth. I was up covering a series in Duluth. It was like 100 below wind chill outside. I remember that.
Yeah.
And they got to about the second overtime. This is when you just played,
Yeah.
And Reed had me on and says, "Okay, what would you do to improve the game of hockey?" And I said, "Melt the ice and put two big baskets up at each end of it." And I think that'd work. I think that'd work. And I think I love hockey characters. I love
Yeah.
writing about old hockey guys
Right.
and hockey, but waiting around for somebody to score a goal, I just have a hard time with that. Now during the playoffs, that's different. I'll
Right.
watch those, but my theory is if I click over and somebody's on a power play, I'll watch it. If I click over at the end of a period and it's a 1-goal game, I'll watch for a while. And then at the end, I'll click over it. If it's a 2-goal game, I'll watch the last 5-6 minutes.
Sure.
But I have the idea of 2.5 hours of watching hockey. Sorry, they can go undefeated from here to there. It just ain't happening. I can't make myself do that. Sorry.
Well, if we talk again in a week, probably won't be too much of a controversial subject, but we'll talk basketball, not hockey. Patrick, awesome stuff.
We can talk it. I went to the opener, and that's when the Kaprizov threw the puck between his legs and tried to go there. And there's something going on with that kid. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah.
And first, if this is true, what we're seeing, and he stays healthy, probably the first superstar we've ever had. The North Stars had some really good players. Neil Broughton was close.
Yep.
Dino was not the kind of guy that got you to come out of the seats. Modano would have been had he stayed.
Yep.
But we've never had the guy who, when he shows up in Chicago, people say, "Boy, I got to go out and see this guy play."
Yep.
And I think this guy might be him from everything I'm reading and the bits and pieces I've watched.
Patrick, love it as always. Thanks for coming on today, and have fun down in Florida. Enjoy the sunshine and watching those Twins. All right.
All right. We will do that, sir. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Take care.
I'm Nyla Jean Myers, Senior Assistant Sports Editor at the Star Tribune. Thank you for listening to Strip Sports Daily Delivery. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast and our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
I'm really happy right now to be joined by Jason Gurwin, co-founder of the Streamable. That is a site that covers kind of all things cord cutting and streaming. He's written extensively about the subject of regional sports networks like Fox Sports North and their removal from several different streaming services in recent months. Jason, welcome. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you. You're definitely more of an expert in this area than me, although I've had to become kind of a quick expert on this as fans have grown increasingly agitated in recent months with not being able to watch some of their favorite teams. So let's, for anybody who's not familiar with this subject, who maybe, doesn't have a streaming service, is saying, well, I watch Fox Sports North still. I have, cable, or I have DirecTV. Where are we? The story basically is a lot of streaming services like Hulu, YouTube TV, don't have Fox Sports North and other regional sports networks anymore. How did we get to where we are? Give me an overview of kind of the situation as it stands right now.
For sure. So let's go back to what Fox Sports Regional Sports Network and their acquisition by Sinclair. So it was very complicated, but Disney actually acquired these regional sports networks originally as part of their deal for 21st Century Fox. They were required to get rid of them. And they were ultimately bought by Sinclair. And a couple years ago, you had a bunch of live TV streaming services pop up, which basically gave the cable experience, but via your streaming player and your mobile device. So the Hulu Live TV, YouTube TV, Slings, Fubos, so on and so forth. And at the outset, almost every one of those services included Fox Sports RSN. And then back in July 2019, Sling and Dish both dropped Fox Sports Regional Sports Network. And that was kind of the first, hammer that was to drop on this. And then over the next 18 months, Fubo TV dropped it in January 2020. And then YouTube TV and Hulu both dropped it in the fall of last year.
So, my sentiment, without again, being an expert in the field, is that when so many different streaming services are dropping regional sports networks or have a problem, whether it's the negotiation or the price, that when it's happening in so many different places, I feel like I know where the blame should go, but I'm sure it's more nuanced than that. How do you, as these sides have, not been able to agree on how to carry these channels anymore, or the carriers have just flat out dropped them, how do you explain that situation? And, I don't want you to assess blame, but how have those negotiations gone, and why ultimately do you think they're not on these streaming services right now?
So the same way that customers don't want to keep paying for higher and higher rates on cable, that's the same thing that's happened with these streaming services. So, over the last couple of years, there's been price hikes, and one of the key contributors to that was regional sports networks. So, on average, when you get a cable bill, you see this, $15 to $20 regional sports fee on your cable bill that kind of gets hidden. But one of the differences on these streaming services is they never charge this separate extra fee. So it ultimately became a price situation where Sinclair wanted more and more and more and more money every year to renew these. And given that these streaming bundles are half the price of cable, they just couldn't fit it in and make it work economically. In fact, even without regional sports network, they are more or less break even on what they pay for the actual channels that are included in them.
I get Hulu, and that bill has gone up considerably and went up considerably even after they dropped, in my area, Fox Sports North. So I think the frustration people have had is, I used to pay for this service and I got what I wanted, and now I'm still paying for it and I'm not getting what I wanted. Have you sensed, is this as someone who's covered this fairly extensively, have you sensed a large level of consumer frustration in this space?
I will tell you the two biggest areas of frustration for streamers right now are, one, the price hikes that you talked about, and two, the fact that all these services have dropped regional sports networks. And the two of them, go hand in hand, right? Like these services have gone up tremendously, but they would go up even more if they kept in regional sports networks, right? Like you're paying $65 a month for Hulu.
Right.
There's one live TV streaming service, AT&T TV, which is $84.99 a month, that does offer Fox Sports RSN. So that's realistically the price that it would have to get to in order to keep these RSNs in there.
That's still cheaper in large part than a cable or satellite package. And I think people are attracted to the streaming services by, the month to month. You don't have to, do the contract, things like that. What's been the bottom line for, both subscribers to these streaming services as they've dropped sports, and also to, Sinclair as they've kind of considered the impact of not being carried on these streaming services anymore?
Yeah, so for Sinclair, this is a very interesting problem. And they actually talked about it a lot during their investor call. There was originally thought that they would go with a direct-to-consumer service sometime later this year. Yep. They're relaunching their app right before the baseball season, but it will only support TV everywhere and authentication. So people either have a cable or streaming package that offers, in your guys' case, Fox Sports North. But now they say that's not coming in terms of unauthenticated users, so direct-to-consumer package till at least 2022. And we don't really even know what that means. Does that mean you'll get a live feed of the RSN but not games? Will you get just some games? And ultimately, what they're going to price it at. I think one thing that's very interesting about the economics about this, that, I think as a streamer, it's hard to understand, is that there are so many people out there that are subsidizing sports fans in their cable package, right? Like the Twins last year on average, I think had about 100,000 viewers, households a game, right? Like there's 1.5 million people in the Minnesota DMA, such a small percentage, especially if cable customers are actually watching the Twins. So if they do go direct to consumer, like this isn't something that they can go and charge $6.99 a month like Disney Plus. Like realistically, to get to the same economics, they would almost need 100,000 people paying $40 a month just for Fox Sports North. And it's even more expensive if you consider a Twins fan may only want it for 8 months out of the year, right? So the economics are very challenging with the true direct-to-consumer package.
Do you feel like that's where we're headed, at least in terms of like any kind of stream or any kind of like bundled sports experience, just for, people who don't want the entire cable, subscription package, but still are willing to pay at a certain price point for, a regional sports network?
I think we'll find a way to get there. I don't think a true direct-to-consumer regional sports package is coming, even in 2022, like Sinclair said. The only way that I could see that happening, Sinclair has made this deal with Bally's, and Fox Sports North is, now becoming Bally Sports North.
Right.
I think they're going to use sports betting to try to subsidize these packages.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So if they need to charge the consumer $40 a month in order to break even on the rights fees that they're paying the Twins, I could imagine a world where they're like, hey, if you're gambling, $100 a month through our service, we'll give you the RSNs for free, because their argument is the more that you gamble, the more likely that you will watch the RSN. Obviously, I don't think online sports betting is legal in Minnesota.
Not yet, but so. It's percolating. I mean, it's legal I think Iowa has legalized sports betting as long as you're in Iowa. So it's being talked about here at least.
Yeah, but that to me is the way that you can get the economics to work. But I don't think you'll be able to buy in-market streaming to every Twins game at a price that, isn't going to get a consumer to go, woo, that's a little expensive in the next, 24 months.
What percentage of overall subscribers to, services like Hulu, YouTube, Sling, Fubo, we talked about them all basically, how much do they represent in the big picture of everyone who subscribes to a cable, satellite, or some type of streaming service? Because it feels like it's a relatively small piece of the pie, but it's also a pretty vocal piece of the pie, and it's also a group of fans in particular that's skews younger that these leagues probably don't want to miss out on.
Yeah, so at the end of 2020, there were about 11.5 million subscribers across these digital cable packages.
Yeah.
And there's about 77 million cable homes in its entirety. So it's getting to be a substantial amount. In fact, Sinclair said last fall that the loss of YouTube and Hulu is actually about a 10% drop in overall rights revenue for them. So, losing these is a meaningful part of their business.
What's your advice for a sports fan who's committed to ditching, cable satellite contracts and the expense, but is still trying to watch, kind of their favorite local teams? Is it AT&T? Is it, kind of bite the bullet and wait? What's the process there?
If you're a Twins fan living in, the local region and you want to watch Twins games, your only option right now in terms of streaming is AT&T TV. Fortunately, they just rolled out these new no contract plans. So, it's $84.99 a month right now. And you'll get Fox Sports North, you'll get, most of the top cable channels, and you can cancel it, keep it for 8 months during the season, and cancel it when games aren't on. So that's certainly an advantage. There's obviously MLB TV, which I think a lot of fans use to watch out of market games. Locally, you won't be able to watch Twins games. But the good news is MLB TV does not black out spring training games. So
okay.
At least if you want to watch, the Twins, I think Fox Sports North will be airing about 10 to 12 Twins.
I think they announced 13, and the first one is on Wednesday.
Yeah, so you will be able to watch MLB TV, and if you're a T-Mobile subscriber, you actually get MLB TV for free on their unlimited plan. So there are options. Unfortunately, it's not as cheap or as easy as it was a year ago, but I would say compared to 5 years ago, when your choice was paying $150 for a cable package that you were locked in for 2 years, it's still substantially better than it once was.
Do you get the sense there's any hope in negotiations between Sinclair and Hulu or YouTube TV, or is that a non-starter at this point as Sinclair considers kind of their future options and these streaming services kind of move forward the way they want to go?
I don't think in the current form of it just being included on the base plan, they're ever coming back to Hulu and YouTube TV. I think if Sinclair was willing to be an add-on to those bundles or being in their sports add-on, I think there is a possibility, but we haven't heard that that is even a topic of negotiation. The CEO of Sinclair was actually asked on an earnings call that exact question, and he kind of, hemmed and hawed and didn't really give a very straightforward answer.
That's never a good sign.
So I think your hunch is as good as mine that, I don't think there's very much, in the words of talks around that.
Circling back too on something we talked about a minute ago that you brought up that's interesting to me, that the Sinclair plans for kind of the regional sports networks in terms of making them available in non-traditional ways. They had talked about this app that they were going to bring along in 2021. You're telling me right now that if you're trying to watch an in-market game without having the cable or satellite subscription that supports that channel, that's a long ways off, I would imagine. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, they've already said that direct to consumer isn't on the roadmap till 2022. And even when it does come, it's certainly possible that it's not going to be direct to consumer, like watching every single game there. It may be you get shoulder programming from Fox Sports North, you get a subset of games, you get only away games. But, I as of right now, they haven't been completely forward with their direct to consumer plans, but certainly not until 2022.
Do you get the sense, last thing for you, do you get the sense that the streaming services like Hulu, YouTube, we've been through all that, were they building a strategy that was, wanting to have these channels and then all of a sudden it wasn't happening for them?
I think these services as a whole came into this with the idea that they would grab a ton of subscribers, basically more or less break even on the programming, and then monetize through the advertising that they get on these channels, because the actual cable or streaming company gets a couple minutes an hour on it. And while 4 million subscribers, which is the largest with Hulu, is a lot, it certainly isn't enough advertising revenue for a channel package that is break even. And if they had RSNs, probably losing, $5 to $10 a month per customer. So I think the one thing that probably caught them by surprise is, how fast programming expenses go up. There's a reason why I know a lot of people hate on cable companies, and I probably should because I run a streaming site, but there's a reason why cable prices go up, right? Like, as you were talking up front, there's good guys and bad guys. And, the one thing that cable companies you hope do on your behalf is force the price of content down, because ultimately that means that your cable bill won't go up as much. And because they haven't, that's why there's been broadcast TV fees. That's why there's been RSN fees. That's why your bundle has gone up. And, now we've seen that a little bit with these streaming services as well. They just haven't been able to, use their power to keep prices down. And a lot of it is because of consolidation in the media industry, right? Like, before you could go make a deal with CBS and only carry CBS channels. Now you need to carry both Viacom and CBS channels, right? Like, before you could get, Warner Media channels. And now, you have to carry, a whole lot more Discovery scripts across the board. Like, this has basically been the reason why costs have gone up, is because you now have to take more in your bundle in order to get a deal done.
Interesting stuff. It's not necessarily great news for the consumer, especially if you have these streaming services right now and you want to watch the Twins, you want to watch the Wild, you want to watch the Timberwolves. A lot of convergence of seasons right now, especially I think what's exacerbated this too is not being able to, there's no in-person attendance in a lot of these things right now. The only way to watch is TV in a lot of these cases right now. And if you have one of those streaming services, you are not able to. But excellent information from Jason Gurwin from the Streamable. Jason, thank you so much for joining the Daily Delivery podcast today.
Thanks very much.
Really enjoyed that conversation with Jason Gurwin from the Streamable. Not necessarily a great news for you if you are a subscriber to one of those streaming services. Maybe take his advice, look at some of those other options, kind of see what's out there. But yeah, you're kind of in a tough spot right now between, kind of in this in-between space right now between, a lot of good direct-to-consumer offerings and what's being offered right now on these streaming services and what you can pay for in a big way on cable and satellite. That leads me naturally to The Cooler. Wild against Vegas, 9 o'clock tonight. A lot of you can watch it. Some of you can't because it's on FSN, but it's a showdown between two of the best teams in the West right now. Two teams on a pretty good run. The Wild has won 6 games in a row after sweeping the Kings in a set of games over the weekend. Fun team to watch right now if you can watch them, so I hope you can. That'll do it for today's Daily Delivery podcast. Thanks again for listening. Subscribe to Star Tribune, startribune.com, and we will be back at this again tomorrow.